cake
Let the
in?
meeting come to order, please. It is now
Hey,
9:02,
hi, Gabby.
and
I'm doing good, I'm in Austria, so something's not working with the camera, but I can hear you real well, so.
Oh, great, good.
we'll lead with the invocation. Irene, if you would lead us, please, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity, together with staff and board members and people from the audience, we thank you for this year's successes and areas of growth. Give us the strength to continue progressing. All these things we ask in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas pledge, please.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you and good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to see almost all y'all. Now, with that, let's have a roll call, Irene, please.
Yes, sir. Jerry Garcia,
Yes, ma'am.
Luis Elizondo,
President hungry.
Gonzalez,
Here.
Devin Bacta,
Here.
Armando Chapa, Caitlin Shu,
She's here.
She's here.
Gabriela Hilpo,
She's here.
She's here.
Here.
Butch Poole,
Here.
Kevin
Physically.
Kishnick,
Here.
Ramiro Canales,
Here.
Leticia Roberts, Melissa Vela, and Terry Nowick. We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Irene, do we have any public comment entries?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go on to item number 6, discussion or action on the consent agenda. Unless someone has something specifically that they want to get out of the letters, I will entertain a motion to accept everything as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Elizondo makes a motion to accept. Butch seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it passes unanimously. Thank you. Ms. Nowak, if you could give us your officer's report, please, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
From my report, you can see all vacancies on the ARB have been filled, so they are fully staffed. Judge Stiff is wonderful about getting things back to me ASAP, so thank him for that. Gay White and Joe Turner moved from auxiliaries to fill the 2 vacancies on the regular board, and so we actually have 4 brand-new people as auxiliaries starting next year.
Who filled them, Terry?
Gay White and Joe Turner. Cheryl Andrews and Joe Teitelbaum both termed out.
Yes, ma'am.
So they're fully staffed and ready to go.
Great. Anything else?
No,
Do you need any help from us?
no, thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you very
All
much,
right, thank
Terry.
you. Happy holidays, everybody.
Yes, ma'am. Likewise.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Next item on the agenda, Pete, if you could come to the podium. It's a discussion to execute an agreement with Linebarger, Logan, Blair, Sampson, LLP for homestead exemption monitoring services.
And because, thank you, sir, thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Canales, staff, and guests, I actually have printouts of these if anybody needs them. I don't know whether you prefer to look at it on the screens or not. It's the same materials. First of all, I want to thank you very much for letting me come back to where it all started. This project that we do, the homestead exemption, was birthed, so to speak, in Nueces, CAD, now 8 or 9 years ago, and we've had great success here, and it's stood out as a good example of thought leadership, and the practice has expanded into the form that I'm going to describe today, and we hope that we can continue the relationship with the latest evolution, so to speak. The first slide is an overview of some of the points we make that I think are probably more familiar to this board than some. That is that we have extensive experience as a firm examining and verifying Texas homestead exemptions, and the new approach, rather than the projects that we've done in the past, which have been every 5 years looking back into eternity, we are adapting the process so that we are able to conduct yearly maintenance reviews and to try to keep the rolls clean now that we've done the big project to clean off the long-standing erroneous exemptions. I'll go into a little bit more what the nature of the project is, but one of the things that the boards seem very interested in, and chief appraisers, is that unlike some of the solutions that are out there, ours attempts to be a turnkey approach. That is, relieving staff of most of the burden of the research and that sort of thing. As I'll explain, we bring all those functions in-house, and you all helped us to develop these methods, which are now pretty well established. The other thing I wanted to bring out that is new is that this past legislative session, I say that we're still in the legislature, but in the regular session of 2023, there was a new bill passed that, kind of recognizing this as a best practice, requires appraisal districts to come up with a plan to keep their rolls clean and to at least once every 5 years examine every homestead in the inventory. So the way that our, if you could, the next please, the way that our system works is that we use a software and a data source called TransUnion, or which you all may have heard of in the context of credit companies or credit bureaus, but they also have a product called TLO-XP. It's not TLO as in taxpayer liaison, but it stands for the last one. That's another long story. But in any case, what this data source is it's just a compendium of public records and purchased information about individuals and properties that allows us to do some of the investigation in an automated fashion. And again, I will get into how that fits into the human process as well. But what we do is we load all of the exemptions from our client appraisal districts into this system, and it identifies suspect exemptions. And a little bit more about what suspect exemptions are on the next slide, please. So the research that our team does is looking for, and the computer process is looking for, exemption holders who, most obvious case is that they're claiming multiple homesteads, that's the middle one, or similar benefits in other states. And when I say similar benefits, we've cataloged all the property tax benefits in states that require primary residence, because the whole notion here is that you can't have a primary residence here and a primary residence. Primary means there's just one. And so we look for those instances where someone might claim a homestead in another state, or very oftentimes a couple gets married and they're no longer eligible for two separate exemptions, and those become multiple exemptions, things like that. The second category is, or when I say second, one of the other categories is that they're not using their property as a primary residence. So this is an instance where someone makes an economic decision to place their homestead exemption on the property where it has the most financial benefit to them, usually because of high rates, high values, high exemptions, and things like that. That can ignore the fact that the law requires, or that the property that has the exemption be the individual's primary residence. So by the means that I'm about to describe, we look for folks who might be claiming a homestead but not actually living there. They're not claiming multiple homesteads, but they're just claiming it on a property for which they're not eligible, and usually gaining some benefit there. And then the last category is one that results in very large underpayment of taxes, is individuals who are deceased and where the ownership change is never reflected. So the typical scenario is that a person reaches age 65, gets a very valuable freeze in their property tax, or at least as the school district goes. It's only been made more valuable with the increase in the mandatory exemption, but that they get this freeze and they continue to pay at that rate. Most of you are probably familiar with that. Well, if somebody dies and doesn't change the property ownership records, that discount for being over 65 can continue to apply and be quite substantial. So if somebody who's in their 90s now was to pass, their taxes would be at a level that was 30 years old. And so there's a substantial gap between that and what a new taxpayer would pay, even one that came in at age 65. Coming in at age 65, it resets the value at the value at the time that the new property owner gets the exemption. So a little bit more about how the process works. Normally, we do an initial 2-year cleanup, followed by a lower cost yearly maintenance review of the scrubbed roll, so that we would come in, and much as we did here over recent couple of years, we would do a big project, and that gets us to a clean baseline. And then every year we come in and we run the entire amount of the roll again, and that's the phase that you all would be in. Since your project closed out fairly recently, we consider that a clean slate, and we could start right in at the lower rate that's for the follow-up maintenance program, and that's what we're proposing today. One thing I will point out that seems to be a comfort to both appraisal districts, boards, and chief appraisers is that this approach is taxpayer friendly, and that it catches these mistakes as they happen, rather than 5 years or 4 years down the road when there's going to be an accumulation of back taxes and interest that can be quite daunting. So we recognize that a lot of our clients were having to present some fairly large tax bills. The idea here is that the revenue will be restored, but on a future basis, rather than going back and cleaning up and getting past monies that are owed, hitting people with surprise bills where they might say, why didn't you tell me about this 3 years ago? Our aim is to start telling people about it as it happens, or within one, at most 2 cycles, which should reduce the potential financial consequences for the affected taxpayers. So the new law that I was referring to, which is called Senate Bill 1801, adds a requirement to the law that appraisal districts must look at this issue. And it's a very loose and vague requirement, but it is a requirement that will be included in the in what are, you're familiar with the map reviews. Conformity with this standard is going to be in there, and we're ready to meet that requirement that you have a plan in place. We are working, if I may, the next slide, please. We're working with the Comptroller's Property Tax Assistance Division. We've looked at and seen the map questions for next year or for the next 2-year period, and there is a question about this. They've explained to us that it'll be satisfied for appraisal districts that to either produce their own written policy and procedure on how they're going to do this, because there are some that try to do it themselves, or to adopt a document that is an outline of the policies and procedures that if they have that, then that map box is checked. So we've submitted to the Comptroller's office, and they're cooperating and helping us to find a document that we can then put into the files of the appraisal district, which will check that box for map purposes. This next slide is a little difficult to read, I know, but it's actually a process that I've explained to you before. The elements in blue along the top are those things that are done by the Linebarger firm under our project, and then the gray box down here is the functions of the appraisal district. So, going quickly through these, we get the data, we transfer it, we clean it up, we send it into TLOXP, and we look for those potential removals, or those potentially bad ones. Then we have a team of agents in Houston that research those initial suspect markings to determine which of them are probably false hits, that is, things that are actually valid exemptions. What's left over is those that remain suspect after some initial phase of research, and we do mailings to the taxpayers at multiple addresses where they might have multiple homesteads, things like that. We then encourage them to call. We don't make outbound calls. They call our call center. We discuss, we gather the information, and ultimately we deliver the goods to the appraisal district with our recommendations, but the authority to remove the exemptions remains with the chief appraiser under the statute. And so it's really just to kind of supplement and assist your appraisal district in having the information that's needed to exercise the statutory function especially well. And I hope that if staff has had a chance to visit with you, that they've been pleased with this process. We consider Nueces to be a great success. We've done 2 of these projects here, and it's in part because of the excellent staff. It's been a very successful and productive collaboration. So, down to what we're suggesting as a contractual arrangement going forward. You may recall that when we did the big projects in the past, we were charging $7 per homestead examined. By doing this more frequently, that is every year, we gain the benefits I described earlier. You also gain budget predictability. It's not every 5 years some huge bill. Rather, it's sort of a repeated subscription basis. What that allows us to do also is to drive the cost down substantially. So, and for Nueces, we're doing a little more because of the long-standing relationship. So the normal pricing or the standardized pricing for an appraisal district this size would be $1.50 per line. Compare that to $7. And what we are offering and have proposed is that we charge $1.37 per account for the appraisal district. And the other element that is oftentimes in our contracts is an escalator. That is, we say the price that we're quoting you will go up 5% every year. We've done away with that in the proposed contract here, so that rate would be good into the indefinite future until such time as a different arrangement was negotiated. A little bit more on TransUnion. If you're curious about this and the variety of sources that are included, it's pretty extensive. It involves billions and billions of records, and it's all automated. We developed the software to submit this information and to get it scored, and it's proprietary to our firm and to TransUnion. Lastly, you can see on the results screen here just some of the successes that we've had, notably Nueces. And I know that the print is small. We've had 2 projects. One brought in $2.4 million in revenue, and the more recent one was $4.6 million. What that shows us is that having done those projects a little less than 5 years apart, the problem is constantly recurring or constantly coming up. And 1 year from now, it'll be a whole new set of problematic ones. And the idea is to try to hit them early. We have found we ran a pilot in another appraisal district that has signed up for this service now, and we found that a year is really, there's plenty of meat on the bone if you do this every year. And if you go more than 2 years, it starts to get to be some pretty much bigger bills. So we thought we would go lower cost, higher frequency in our offering. I know that's a mouthful. My wife says that you just wind me up and I'll talk. But I enjoy what I do, and I've enjoyed working with your staff and with Mr. Canales, and hope that you all appreciate the benefits that we've been able to bring to the appraisal district and the taxing units that you support. Happy to answer any questions at this time.
Mr. Chairman? Hey, Peter, are you recommending that we do it every year or every 2 years, or what's the recommendation? Well,
Based on our research, and the pricing reflects this, we're recommending every year, just because if one of the imperatives, first of all, you're going to have it's much more manageable. We can charge less for it because it's not going to be such a big job every year. But beyond that, if you get beyond the yearly examination, you run into situations where if you're just looking at them every 2 or every 3 years, depending on where they fall in the cycle, you'll end up with those larger bills that we were hoping to address through this alternative process. So our recommendation is 1 year. If we were to discuss other terms, it would involve probably our having to go back to the drawing board on pricing, because this pricing is based on that supposition.
So it's basically 15 cents per exemption savings.
It's $1.
Well, it's $1.37.
Oh, you mean savings?
Yeah,
yes,
we
it's
multiply
13
it
cents.
times 5,
It's a 13 cent.
$6.85.
Yeah, it's roughly a little less than a 10% discount off our standardized pricing. Plus, the escalator that we've eliminated drives that up 5% every year, so
Okay.
you
So
would
you
not
would
be
be-
facing that increase.
$7, if we did it every 5 years, it'd be $7 plus 5%, or is it every year there'd be a 5% increase?
No, what would the two alternative models are that, okay, I'll lay out the way that we did the two previous projects here, which was that we charged one considerably larger, that is $7 roughly, and I think we discounted that somewhat because of our favorable relationship, but it used to be that we would charge $7 and we would come in every 4 or 5 years.
Right.
What we've done now is made it so that time value of money included, you're spending about the same amount, but you're keeping it clean and getting the benefits and moving the revenue to the future. Now, it's harder to measure how much you're going to get because you don't know whether these exemptions are going to be restored or corrected or cured, but taxpayers we've found respond very favorably to being told you need to fix this now before you have a problem, and that's kind of what the aim and the push is, and that's supported by the one-year approach, we feel.
And let me explain that a little further. So what's happening right now when we run this is once we get these exemptions come into my office, then we send these corrective bills out. Some of these bills are over $20,000, and they have 21 days to pay, come up with $21,000. And you got 21 days, and then after that, penalty and interest kicks in. It's not taxpayer friendly at all to be doing it on a 5-year basis. So in some of these cases, it's new owners getting hit from prior taxes because it's based on when that ownership change takes place. And some of these people they never even took advantage of these exemptions, but yet because it attaches to the property, that owner is now, it's between them and the seller when it becomes those issues. So
Good luck.
yeah, and so I've seen it happen because I'm the one dealing with it. So
Sometimes the title companies get involved too.
yeah, and there's a lot of times we refer them to the title company and try to get them pulling on the title
Good luck with
policy.
that, too.
But that doesn't always work, and so yeah, it really if it's fixed during the year that it happens, it becomes a non-problem for both sides because you're not dealing with penalties and interest that get kicked in. So I think this is the best taxpayer-friendly way to go and keeps it very manageable.
My thought is just on the revenue generated versus the cost. You know, what would our cost be if we did it every 2 years versus every year?
We really don't have that number because we'd need to probably run some tests of the data to see how much there is after 2 years. We were using a one-year approach and have tested that pretty thoroughly and come up with this. But I think that it might be a little bit less in terms of the 5-year total than what you're doing now if you did it every 2 or 3 years, because I don't know that it would, if you cut the frequency in half, I don't know whether it doubles the price. I don't think it would. I think there's economies of scale
Right.
that say that it would be somewhat less. But what you don't get is this whole notion of cleansing it in real time and kind of smoothing the curves for your tax assessor collector and for this office having to answer questions about, you know, what you could have done this 3 years ago or 2 years ago.
Right.
So that's
I'm trying to balance the cost versus the revenue generated.
I will tell you that I think that you're probably going to find something of a wash in terms of these approaches, and it's just in terms of how much revenue is gotten. It will be more if you wait longer between these audits because you're going to have the penalties, and that's more commonly you'll have 2609D interest on them, and so you might make more money, but that's money that's going to probably provide some level of aggravation for the affected taxpayers.
I get that.
The aggravation is magnified when it's, instead of $1, it's $10.
Well, the aggravation comes in because you got penalties and interest that kick in when you do it every 2 years.
The situation, quite frankly, is that there's nothing that the taxpayer can do, quite frankly, because he's not going to go back to the old owner. The owner's long gone.
Right.
The title company has washed their hands because that's what the title, I mean, I've seen this happen. I've seen this happen a lot. And the longer.
And there's an argument that the title company didn't collect enough taxes.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's a claim against the title policy, so.
The more difficult it is, and I agree with Pete that we should try to get this every year. It makes everything, because that goal is not eliminated if we do it 1 year or 5 years. At 5 years, it's bigger, but how much of that are you gonna get? So,
You get it, but then they wind up with the big penalties and interest, and that's not taxpayer friendly at all.
And in the end, those can lead to collections and foreclosures even.
Yeah.
A lot of times we'll see people take deferrals at that point.
Damage credit, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
you're
Well,
right.
mea culpa, I got caught, so, got married, forgot that Helen had her house that she was living in. I had mine, we moved into, took it off mine. It was still on hers. I think it was a 5-year period and penalties and interest.
I think it was
Yeah.
Kevin that reported you.
Yes.
But anyway,
So, you know, from the taxpayer side, I do get the 1 year.
I wasn't aware of that.
that's why
but,
he's asking you questions, Pete. He wants to hammer you.
Well, no, I hope that it was understandable from the taxpayer end, but no, I think it's actually the next evolution and probably an improvement over the way we used to do it. But you know, there's a lot of things that are happening as our program grows that make it more efficient. One of them is, for instance, we have people who are really, really good at looking and verifying deceased. You know, people have skills and strengths, and you can't really specialize when you're with a smaller number of clients. But we're getting a volume now where we can put multiple clients' deceased cases with the deceased expert and that sort of thing. So Nueces CAT has been a big part of this journey, and you know, regardless of what the decision is today, we really do appreciate the opportunity to provide these services. And I hate to have such a close-in example of the fact that we are doing this, but it seems to work rather well.
Well, the reality is that when Paul first came up here, when we first agreed to all this, we were both in uncharted territory. And we, at that point, I believe that it was probably the most prudent thing for us to do, because it was being handled by professionals, and Paul quite frankly stated that it was going to be a learning process, but we're going to get on top of this. And sure enough, it has blossomed, and you all have been very successful, and I appreciate what you all are doing, and I congratulate you all. And with that being said, unless we have any other questions for Pete, we'll entertain a motion to accept the the presentation is.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Thank you, Pete.
Hold on, just 1 second.
We're asking for a motion to give the chief appraiser the authority to continue these discussions. We have a draft contract to negotiate all of that, and then to execute that contract.
Okay.
It's,
All right,
it's
so
roughly,
That's,
rough number, 100,000, what's the?
Yeah, we really wanted to keep it under 100,000, so it's
Okay.
94,000 and change is
That's
what.
what I got. Thank you for your answers, Pete.
okay.
We're saying 97,000 because of growth and all of that that's been going on, but that's,
Not to
you're not
exceed
gonna
that.
charge for all those, we're just reserving it.
So now I'll go ahead.
Should we
and-
say not to exceed 100,000, Mr. Chairman?
Well, we really can't put a limit on that.
I wouldn't put a
What
limit on
I'm
it,
saying is
'cause-
that we're authorizing the chief appraiser up
Well, I
to.
think the devil's in the details, but I believe that Ronnie and Elias have, and our attorneys have gotten together on the numbers, and
But can we do an open-ended contract like that?
You can do a 5-year, not to exceed $100,000 per year. And we think
Yeah, I
that should be
think that-
sufficient to capture. all
Yeah,
those.
Yeah, I think that there's gotta be a limit.
yeah, the limit is $100,000.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Per
is if
year.
I'm
something-
sorry, I misunderstood
Yeah.
you.
Per year.
But wouldn't it be dictated by the number of accounts based on what I
Yeah.
was reading?
Well,
here?
that's
So,
a
I mean,
negotiable
so-
term.
so-
I mean, whether or not we say, we'll
mean-
take all you got for this amount, or the way that we have typically done this, and this is an area where there might be a benefit to Nueces that not everybody enjoys, is that we say, give us your current number, and then we do a true up at the end of the project. So if we actually ended up analyzing 105,000 accounts rather than 100,000 accounts, we would at the end charge for those extra accounts. That's just what we do. That doesn't mean that we have to do that
Right.
that way.
Because you probably want to hit all of them. I mean, I think if you've got,
No, we would do them all.
yeah,
We
because
would do them all. It's
because
just a
the
question whether we would-
contract's there, so.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know whether, right now, the form of the contract says that if there are ones above the snapshot that's reflected here, that we will charge the rate that's in effect at that time, which is $1.37. So if we had 100 extra, there'd be $13 and, $130, $137 more. But
Yeah.
again, that I think is within the range of things that would be negotiable if this were to be approved.
It's
Ronnie, what do you think?
Okay, so we've gotten that straightened out. Any other questions for Pete?
I just, for the future, I would love to see a rate of return sheet at one point of time, just to see how much the appraisal district is benefiting from the program. Doesn't need to be for this, because we're just voting on the future deal, but just if that's something they have in the program, it would be interesting.
I'm happy to provide those statistics. We keep those, and I can tell you that the general ballpark range is between 4 and 5 to 1 return on investment under the old model.
Okay.
So it's more difficult to calculate the return when you're talking about taxes that will be collected in future periods rather than back taxes that are being collected. But we did that, and we saw that after a year, it was still paid for itself. We can't guarantee or warrant that, because if we did a good job, then presumably there's not going to be that many, and we're going to catch them as they go bad, and there won't be penalties and interest. So it's a little bit trickier to calculate the financial benefits, but
you could give a total number of cases that were caught.
You're also preventing a problem of losing the revenue from these on an ongoing basis. So it's a big prevention measure, and I think it's worth every penny of it.
Right, but you could quantify it by saying every year we catch 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever it is.
Yeah, we will provide those statistics. We've historically provided them, and I can resend them to the chief appraiser for him to share the closeout report from our last big project, and that's going to, I think, provide a proof of concept, even if it doesn't exactly predict what we would see here. The other thing that I will tell you that's a benefit to the taxing units is deferrals. And we've actually taken to the point of, a deferral is when a person who's over 65 and has a primary residence, a homestead exemption, elects to just pay interest every year or some small portion of their taxes, and the ultimate tax bill is deferred to such time as the property transfers, typically upon death. And what that does is present cash flow problems for the taxing units, because that's money that they're not seeing until some unknown future date, even if they are getting the interest on it. Well, one of the requirements for that deferral is that it be a valid primary homestead exemption. So those will come off, and that helps with the cash flow too. I don't know if you would agree with that, but
the deferrals are actually where some of the largest dollars come from. Right. Because you've got, there's properties out there on deferral right now on Ocean Drive. That have been on deferral for about 25 years. So they're probably owe more in taxes than what the property is worth at this point. So
I guess that becomes an issue, doesn't it?
it does. Yeah. And they have 180 days from the time that the person is notified. It used to be 180 days from death. Now it's 180 days from notification.
Hey, Kevin, on the deferral,
Even though it's multiple years.
on the
Yeah, okay,
deferral,
that sounds
the
great.
interest is predicated on the amount that's owed all the way through it.
Correct. From the time it accrues, but it accrues at a different rate. It's not a penalty interest. It's, I think the legislature changes it from time to time. I think right now the interest rate's 5. It accrues like 5% per year or something like that.
Okay.
I can tell you Elias was good enough to pull out of his bag of statistics some more precise numbers on the return that we were being asked about, and that is that the additional tax revenues, according to that, were $3.6 million on 424,000, which is actually a very high ROI. That's better than 8 to 1. So again, I'll provide the more specific numbers from which this was derived, but that gives you the high level on it.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions for Pete? At this time, we'll entertain a motion as per Elias's guidance on giving Ronnie the authorization and Elias to go ahead and proceed with contract.
I make a motion.
Who's that? Kevin makes a motion. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Butch seconds that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it passes unanimously. Thank you again, Councilor.
Thank you very much, sir, and board members. We appreciate your support, and happy to be able to be of service. And I may excuse myself because I'm headed for North Texas now, but thank you very much.
Good luck, buddy. Be careful of the weather.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Elias. Discussion or action to approve year-end budget line item transfers. I got a glimpse of this and you're on.
Okay. So you're wrong. That's what I thought you said.
These tragedies, all I gotta say.
I'll get up here because I have a lot of stuff. All right, so this is in tab number 9. It's an annual item. Forecast to the end of the year, and then we'll talk about in the next budget, the next board agenda item, what we recommend doing with it. So, had to go down each line item, forecast from whatever we knew about, add to it to the end of the year. This is a summary on page 8 and detailed version on pages 9 and 10. But the bottom line is that any overages we had several of them this year because of the higher business activities, higher ARB, higher office supplies, higher postage, higher printing, because heightened levels of activities. We did a lot this year. When we saw the direction the budget was going and the flat budget for next year, we curtailed a lot of expenses as best we could, because we think we're going to have bigger problems next year with line items.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Bigger problems because we had basically a flat budget. Actually, we reduced the budget to make room to add all the election stuff on it. So we expect a lot of this to continue into next year. So in the next agenda item, we'll talk about where we want to park it. But this is just for purposes of last time you guys approved a budget, the line items look like this. Now we know what we didn't know a year and 6 months ago. And so this is an updated forecast, and what we want you to do is to approve for us how we're moving money between line items so that we can cover overages. Now, the big things are, we've got bottom line here on this first page. We think we're going to have $488,000 left over from this budget. There's some big ticket items that led to that. $220,000 was because the interest rates were so much higher than what we originally forecasted. We had vacancies during the year, and Ronnie wanted to hold off on filling them. We ultimately filled them, but we were holding off. Well, there were savings in the meantime, and it adds up quick. It's $225,000. There was another about $20,000. We had added, I think, $15,000 to the budget last minute because we thought there would be higher gas prices. They did go up, but then they came back down and tapered off. So there's another 20 sitting there. We did not need the property value consulting that we had put in because of the 4 ISDs. And that also got stripped out of the 24 budget, but we didn't spend it, so it's here still. And we, instead of doing vehicles, replacement vehicles as budgeted, we did that big pipe project. And we've had air conditioning issues, and we've had other plumbing before that. And so we held off on those, and we're trying to stretch the existing fleet. And again, in the next board agenda item, we're going to talk about how we want to capture that money and reserve it for when that time comes where we have to pull the trigger and buy cars. But again, next board agenda item, we just want you to approve the transfer plan, moving things between line items.
We'll go ahead and, does anyone have any questions for Elias? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the adjusting of line items.
So moved.
Butch makes a motion to approve, Mr. Elizondo seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it passes unanimously. Thank you for that, Mr. Elizondo. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Elias, now.
I don't need one of these usually. Okay, so I'll just yell. I'm good at that. Okay, so board agenda item 10 is on tab 10. Now we're going to talk about where, because remember, it's just an estimate. 488,000 could be higher, it could be lower. We don't know until the whole thing shakes out. So 488,000, here's where it's going. We call this the GASB 54 funds designation. So as I like to call it, the kitty, and what's in it, and what it's earmarked for. Last time you guys approved it, that's the first column. We had 2.8 million sitting there, and there's 4 categories. Non-spendable, so that's like inventory of supplies or prepaid insurance premiums, that kind of thing. It's not in cash form anymore, but it's a financial thing on our balance sheet. Then there's committed, and we call that board money. These are things that are committed, but we have to come to you before we can even move on these. And those are building maintenance, these are mainly reserves. Building maintenance reserves, capital acquisitions or improvement reserves, the litigation fund, we can't do anything with that money until we come to you. Cash flow and operating reserve. The first column is what we came into 2023 with. At the end of 2022, these were the balances. The assigned is what you give the chief appraiser to supplement the budget, the future budgets. And what we have in there is the HVAC replacement when needed. That's if one of those big units on the roof goes out, we don't have time for budget amendments, so we got to get the air conditioner replaced. So we have the 100,000 sitting here. Health insurance overruns, because we never know what's going on with health insurance because we're partially self-funded. 93,000 we came into the year with. Then we're going to add 3 categories to that, and we'll go through them. So mapping over from the first column, what we ended 2022 with, over to the far right column, which is what we think we're going to end 2023 with. The changes are in the middle column. So the non-spendable, we don't know that until the audit numbers come out. The litigation fund, we're forecasting, we started the year with 621,000. We've spent, we had 500 budgeted, and we spent 221,000 beyond the 500 budget because it's a multi-year thing. It comes in 500,000 a year, but it goes out higher or lower each year. So when we started the year 221, we think we're going to end the year overspending that line item, 221,000, so it's going to come out of the 621. And then when we were doing our budget discussions, we talked about supplementing this, moving 500,000 from another line item up into the litigation fund. So that 500,000 is coming from the line below at the cash flow operating reserve up to the litigation fund to supplement it to start 2024 with $900,012. Then the cash flow operating reserve, last time you saw it, it was almost 1.2 million. We want to take 500,000 out of there and move it into the litigation fund. 97,000 want to move down to assigned for the chief appraiser to do the homestead audit that y'all just approved, because we didn't know about that when we were doing the 24 budget. So we're going to use this money to pay for it. And then that 5,400 is just a forecasted residual, whatever's left that's not accounted for anywhere else. In the assigned category, we're leaving the HVAC reserve at 100,000. We're leaving the health insurance reserve for almost 94,000. But we want to capture the difference between what we had budgeted in the plumbing project, so it's 118,390. We want to capture that money, move it into here, and then use it as needed, either in 2024 or 2025, whenever we get around to replacing vehicles, rather than asking the entities for that money in the future. We have it already. Then we have the third floor remodel. That was in the budget discussions. We estimated it was going to be 586,000 to finish off the third floor. So we want to capture that money here. Instead of asking the entities in 2024 for it, we're going to take it out of here. And then the homestead exemption audit, our best guess with a little fluff room, because we're not sure how that's going to shake out. That's the 97,000 that we just talked about with Peter. So that's what staff is recommending in the way of where to park this leftover money at the end of the year. This is all based on estimates. After the audit is done, you'll get a presentation of the audit, and then again another board agenda item to talk about this again, but with the final numbers. This is just for purposes of putting it somewhere.
Those final numbers are going to be in March?
Usually, I want to say he's been doing them in May. Okay. He finishes up with us like March, April, but
right.
then he does things.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the transfers as recommended by staff.
Kevin makes a motion to the presentation as presented. Devin seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Item number 11, discussion and/or action to terminate the engagement of Greer, Hurst, and Adams LLP in the Valero litigation. Melissa?
Okay, so on this one, Mike Adams and Scott Andrews, who are outside counsel for Valero, they're moving law firms to the Doyle Law Firm. So they're leaving Greer, Hurst, Adams. So we're just asking approval to terminate the engagement agreement that we currently have with that law firm. And that will terminate December 31st, 2023.
Okay, that's just a house cleaning process then, Melissa?
Yes, sir.
All right.
So it's 12.
Any questions for Mel?
So they're going to Valero?
No, they're going to the Doyle Law Firm.
I thought, man, if you can't beat them, join them.
We're just giving them okay to move.
And we're coming in with insider information. At this time, we'll go ahead and get a motion to do the termination engagement letter, please. Mr. Elizondo makes a motion to terminate, and Leo
Second.
seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Let the record show it passes unanimously.
So now you need a motion for number 12, right?
Correct.
Now we're gonna, yes, now we need a motion to number 12. Let's go ahead and, Melissa, do you think you need to enhance this even further, or are we ready to go on?
No, so on this one, Mike and Scott will be going to the Doyle Law Firm. That will start January 1. We're asking for authorization for Chief Appraiser to execute the agreement. So we do have that in tab 12. It's the same engagement essentially that we've had before, same pricing, all that good stuff. So we're just asking for that approval for Mr. Canales to execute the agreement.
Is there any vetting of a law firm that has to go on, or we just,
No.
I mean, do we ever have any, I guess they do a conflict thing, but
Yes, they do their conflict check.
But we
They've
don't-
already done all that, we're good.
we're not required to do any kind of vetting of a
No.
law firm? Okay, no.
It's a professional service.
Yes.
Any other questions for Melissa? They pointed out a figure on the Doyle Law Firm, but it's an insider attorney, so he's all in on it. So with that, let's go ahead and accept a motion, or I'll accept a motion for an engagement letter with the Doyle Law Firm.
So move.
Who said that?
Kevin.
Kevin says that. Kevin makes a motion to approve. LA makes seconds it.
Mr. Elizondo.
Mr. Elizondo seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show that it passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Melissa. And at this time, it is 9:49. We're gonna go into what?
We have not had any changes with Valero nor Flint Hills. Do we still want to go into closed session? All right. Go ahead.
Don't interrupt me again.
I'm sorry.
Now, with that, it is now, because of Ronnie's talking, we're another 2 minutes late. And now we're going to go ahead, and it's 9:49, we're going to go into executive session. And public notice is given that the Board of Directors may elect to go into executive session anytime during the meeting to discuss matters listed anywhere on the agenda when authorized by the Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. Should the Board of Directors elect to go into executive session, the section or sections of the Open Meetings Act authorizing the executive session will be publicly announced by the presiding officer. Upon completion of executive session, the Board of Directors may take such action as appropriate in open session. A, consult with legal counsel regarding Flint Hills / Valero litigation and related matters, 551.071. At this time, we'll go into executive session. Thank you. No action taken in the executive session, so now we'll go to item number 15.
Wait,
Wait until we're back online.
Oh, I thought we were.
It's not showing yet.
Oh,
It takes 30 seconds. No, we're back. It takes 30 seconds to.
yeah,
And action.
okay. So we are back online. The executive session is over with, and there was no action taken on any of the executive session. And now we'll go ahead and go on to the chief appraiser's report. Lonnie?
Yeah, cybersecurity assessment. We've been working on that the latter part of the year, I guess, the last few months. And we're going to be doing some things coming up. You want to explain a little bit, Neil?
Well, without going into much detail on it, the review went good. We're covered pretty much everywhere. There's just some things we need to tighten up on.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Tell him.
He didn't even know how to turn on a computer. Go ahead.
We're just, the main thing is we just got to work on a policy, but other than that, everything went really good. Comsol is our company we're going with for this part of the evaluation. Later on, we'll be putting out bids for what we're going to do, pen testing and some other ongoing remediation consultings. Just in case something happens, we have somebody in the wings ready to go.
And Neil, on that, on the consulting basis, is that part of the deal that we don't have to pay extra for it, or?
No, this is the company the city uses. So they had really good. They had a really good review with the city, a really good rapport. Peter spoke very highly of them.
Mm-hmm.
We did put out bids before we went with them, but this was not budgeted. But a lot of the services that we're going to be able to tighten up are services that we already paid for with our Microsoft product.
I see.
Of course, like any company, they want to sell you new fangled things and stuff like that. But we've worked with them, told them we need to use what we have, and we have pretty much everything.
Okay. Anything else, Ronnie?
Peter
Collins.
Collins, the
Yes.
head of IT department for the city, not Sonoma. Okay, just in case you thought about him. Anyway, at this point,
Looks like some haterism in your game. Okay,
I
Ronnie.
won't get into that one. At this point, I'd like to present a plaque of appreciation. And this has been for several years, actually, from 22, 23 budget.
Oh, thank you very much.
And honestly, I appreciate all the things that you've done here while you've been here for your service term.
Well, thank you.
And, you know, we've always wanted to, at least I have, expressed to each board of director when they come on board, to keep their agendas at home, be open to what we need to do here first before you respond to the person or the entity you come from. And because, you know, if you start limiting resources here, after time, it's gonna get worse to build up, just like anything else. If you start look at your streets, that's a perfect example. If they have been taking care of the streets, the city had been taking care of that from years past with monies that were there back then, we wouldn't be having that kind of problem. And the thing with our office is that it's very capable of doing what needs to get done, so long as it has its proper resources and proper staff and proper other issues that we need to do when it comes to what we have to do. And I'm sure that the numbers that we provide to all these entities are because of what staff does on a yearly basis. This year was not a learning experience for us, but at the same time, though, we went through a lot this year. Over the last few years, we've been, what people have been protesting had been averaging about anywhere between 15 to 20,000. This year, we're hovering at 40 or a little over 40,000. Okay? Now, the third floor, finally, we're going to want to do something so it allows us to employ more staff people. And we need that because the county is growing, regardless of what people might say. And we've seen the numbers, our lawsuits are growing. That's the other issue that we have. The in-house counsel has done a very, very good job of making sure that they keep up to date with all the lawsuits that we got. just from the months of, I guess, after certification in July through November, we've had close to 300 new lawsuits, not including the prior lawsuits that we have from the past. And because of the in-house counsel has been able to work real well together with staff, it has helped us a lot. And we appreciate the work that they do, along with everybody else that we have here in the office. So, but I want to thank you for the direction
Thank you.
and leadership that you chose for the board.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And on a personal level, Butch, the board is going to miss you and Armando. You all have done a yeoman's job on, for the board. And besides, I enhance your vocabulary. Other than that, thank you so very much for
Certainly. Well, thank
taking
you.
time
out. You and Armando both have done a great job, all kidding aside, and I sure am going to miss you all.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Ronnie, anything else?
Other than happy holidays, and the staff has done one heck of a job this year with all the obstacles that was put before us. So, Elias, you did a great job making the presentation today, and we appreciate that. I think that with the law firm coming in to help us do the homestead issues that we have pending, Christy Hill is used to that. She's been working with them real close, and I think we'll be just as successful again. Other than that, L.A.
That's from L.A.
Merry Christmas to you and your family.
That's from L.A.
I know.
With that, any suggested items for our next meeting next month?
Since I'm terming off, I say no more bathroom breaks. Meetings should be held midnight on Sundays. That's it. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Anyway, don't forget that today at noon,
Yeah, 11:30.
at 11:30, we're meeting at Ronnie Canales' house for 3 tortillas and some refried beans. And,
Refried.
so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. L.A. makes, Mr. Elizondo, yes?
Happy holidays, guys.
Oh, thank you, Gabby. Caitlin, thank you so much for being at this meeting. Mr. Elizondo makes a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Is there a second?
I second.
Butch seconds it. That's his last second of the year. That's the last number 2 of the year. So with that, is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Let the record show it passes super unanimously. Thank you again, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.